Good morning. Today is Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024. One of the most famous images in all of Judaism comes from our Torah portion, the Parsha of Shemos, the first portion in the second book of the Torah, the book of Shemos, the book of Exodus. And that image is the burning bush. The Torah tells us early in our Parsha, Moshe hayaroa es tzon Yisro chosneu kohen Midian. Moshe was the son-in-law of Yisro, and he was Yisro's shepherd. Vayinaheg es hatzon achar hamidbar v'yavo el har ho'elakim choreva. Moshe guided the sheep in a way that finally he reached a place called the mountain of God. Vayera malach Hashem elav balabas eish mitoch hasneh, and an angel of God appeared to Moshe from within the heart of the fire. Vayar, and Moshe saw, v'hinei hasneh boer bo'esh, the bush was burning, it was on fire, but v'hasneh einenu kol, but the bush didn't burn. There was a fire inside it, but the bush itself did not burn. Vayomer Moshe says to himself, Asura naver es hamareh hagadol hazeh. I'm going to turn aside and see this very unusual sight. Madua lo yivar hasneh. Why is it that the bush itself is not burning if there's a fire inside of it? Vayar Hashem kisar liros. And when God saw that Moshe had turned off his path to investigate, he was curious about what this sight meant. Vayikra elav Elokim mitoch hasneh. God called to Moshe from the midst of the bush. Vayomer Moshe, Moshe. God called Moshe, Moshe. Vayomer hineni. And Moshe said, here I am. What does it mean? What are we supposed to make of a bush that is burning on the inside but is not on fire on the outside? One common way to understand it is that the bush is a metaphor for the Jewish people. The Jewish people at this time, remember, they are suffering terribly the persecution and slavery in Egypt. And the message of the book is, in spite of the fire, the bush survives. In spite of slavery, Jews will survive and leave Egypt. In spite of the Holocaust, Jews will survive. And I would add, in spite of Hamas, Jews will survive, and not only that, Israel will flourish. And that's the message. The first message that God gives to Moshe, whatever the Jewish people goes through, it's going to be better afterwards. Okay, that's a common way to understand it. Rabbi Hirsch points out the unusual word that the fire appeared balabas eish, mitoch hasneh, from the midst of the fire. Balabas is an unusual word, and Rav Hirsch says it means the lave of the fire. The fire was in the heart of the bush. What does that mean? So I want to share with you a very important insight of the Rav, Rabbi Yosef Soloveitchik. He explains that what intrigued Moshe was that there was a fire burning inside. Now, normally, when a fire is burning inside, a nebuch, a destructive fire, God forbid, it's burning inside, in the middle, so then the outside is going to catch fire as well. But here, there was a fire burning inside, in the middle of the bush, in the heart of the bush, but the outside of the bush was not on fire. The outside of the bush appeared normal. And the Medrash explains the metaphor, the lesson that Moshe was, and we are to learn from this image is as follows. Moshe wondered, why would the Jewish people of his time merit the exodus from Egypt? Merit being saved by God from slavery and persecution. To look at them superficially, and remember, the book of Shemos opens about 200 years after the end of Bereshis. And during those 200 years, the Jewish people in Egypt had descended into slavery, descended into persecution, but it had also descended spiritually. They were nowhere near the spiritual level, the closest to God that they were about 200 years ago at the end of Bereshis. Our sages describe them as standing b'mem tes share tuma, on the 49th lowest level of ritual impurity, and there are only 50 levels. So why do they deserve to leave? And that's why Moshe questions God when God says to him that he's going to take the Jews out of Egypt. Moshe asks, why? Why do you care? Why do they deserve it? And it is to respond to that potential question that God shows Moshe the vision of the bush, which was a metaphor for every Jew. And that message is that inside every Jew is a spark of goodness and merit, even if on the outside he or she appears plain. The bush is a metaphor for the merit, or at least the potential merit, of every Jew, even those removed from Judaism, even those removed from holiness and sanctity and removed from God. You know, it's very easy to look down on others. If you think that you know more than them, you look down on them. You think that you're better than them, you look down on them. You think that they are more ignorant than you are, you look down on them. And God shows Moshe that this is a terrible mistake. Don't ever do this. Because great leadership requires that you believe you can help bring out the abilities and the energy within a person who never even imagined they had it themselves. You must believe in in the greatness of those who you lead. Otherwise, you cannot be an effective leader. It's no coincidence that the first leader mentioned in our Torah portion of the Jewish people, a very different kind of a leader, Miriam, is a midwife. Because leadership is about helping someone else give birth to themselves, give birth to the better part of themselves. Great leadership is to find the fire and the drive inside someone when no one else sees it. And then to help that fire be born and take effect. I've shared this with you before, with some of you before. There's a prayer that we say in the synagogue every Shabbos, where we give a blessing, a bracha, to those who work on behalf of the community. Hopefully it applies to rabbis, I hope, but certainly applies to those people who volunteer their time, lay leaders, people who help out, people who make sure that the shul is running, the school is running, the community is running well, who are looking out for the best interests of these Jewish institutions. Excuse me. And all those who are involved in the needs of the community, be'emunah. God should bless them, forgive them their sins, heal their illnesses, and bring them success and fulfillment in everything that they do. But in order to deserve those beautiful blessings, you've got to be one of those who is osek b'tzarchei tzibur, who's involved in the needs of the community, be'emunah. Well, be'emunah, with faithfulness, the word to have faith, with faithfulness, you got to do a good job. You have to be sincerely motivated. You have to be dedicated to the task. But emunah also means truth. To be able to trust another. Means those who serve the community with a sense of trust in the goodness of those you lead. If you're always looking down on them, that's not going to get it. A Jewish leader must always be looking at those he or she is leading with trust that there is a fire inside of them. And it's my job to help bring that fire out in a constructive way. This is God's first overture to Moshe to become this leader. This is the kind of leader God wants Moshe to become. In a certain sense, I would say, God sees the fire within Moshe that has not yet appeared on the outside. And with God's help tomorrow, we will see what Moshe learned next in order to be convinced to agree to accept God's mission. My friends, I want to wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.